There are lots of iconic characters from the 1980s, but there are fewer more beloved or cherished than the Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters was a massive success in the cinema, on home video, and even on kids' toys and comics. The movie spawned a cartoon series and even some video games in the 1980s on home micros like the Commodore 64. Ghostbusters on the Commodore 64 was a great game for its time, and it was ported across to dozens of systems without really changing much. So Sega decided they wanted to change things up a little, and they got the rights to license the game. And then they produced this rather cute platform / run-and-gun game for the megadrive. You may be mistaken for thinking that this version of Ghostbusters was maybe a repurposed game. A game that was something completely different, simply reskinned to appear like the Ghostbusters. This is how the real Ghostbusters arcade game came to be. But this game was always Ghostbusters. It has some of the Ghostbusters iconography in there, such as the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and the 3 Ghostbusters themselves, but there are new additions like the weird inventor guy who sells you stuff, and the item sales guy. There is also very little resemblance to the film in this game, but that's not a bad thing at all, as this game was easily the best Ghostbusters game to be released up to this point. The game's story involves ghosts terrorising a city after an earthquake. The game features a choice of 3 playable Ghostbuster characters from the films: Peter Venkman, Ray Stantz, and Egon Spengler. The Ghostbusters each have their own traits relating to speed and shooting strength, and they are each animated with oversized heads meant to resemble their respective actors' likeness. The player can crouch, jump, and is equipped with a positron gun, which can be shot in all directions, and is used to eliminate ghosts. The player earns money by eliminating ghosts, and can use the funds to buy upgraded weapons through shops that appear in between levels. Having a look at the game's graphics, and it has that 90s replicating the 80s feel to it, especially the cutscenes with the text boxes and animated avatars. The main sprites are nicely animated, especially given the few frames of animation actually used on them, and the heads look up when shooting up, and you get this neat touch with the steam from the breath in the cold level. The backgrounds are a little bland and repetitive on each level, and this can cause problems when moving around, as it is easy to get lost as everything just looks the same. And as you play through the game more, you can see how little the game has with the original source material of the movie. I mean, I don't ever remember seeing these guys in the movie. Do you? But I do remember seeing Slimer. Who could forget Slimer? Well, not Sega, that's for sure, as he pops up at various points to offer life or energy when shot. And I have to say, he looks good in this game. Almost as good as he does in the movie. The sound is this mix of blasts, stings, bongs and thumps. And they don't sound like anything in the movie. But in this game, I think they are fine. They do their job well and they sound okay. I do like the music in the game, however, and I always have done. The little tunes and jingles are very catchy, and they capture the feel and theme of each level perfectly. The game was actually pretty big in terms of level design for a megadrive game. I once completed Revenge of Shinobi in about 12 minutes. Even taking your time, Super Shinobi is like a 20-minute game. Ghostbusters is about an hour, and it was an inexpensive megadrive game as well at £30. Well, it was £30 when I got it. And so, it provided a good return for your money. As it is a platform game, I am usually no good at that type of game. But Ghostbusters wasn't that kind of platformer. It didn't have any annoying jumpy bits, and the platforms that did disappear just reappeared when walking off screen for a second. The run and gun bits are more like stop and shoot sections. You can't run and gun at the same time, but that just means that positional placement and angles are more important and vital to progress. Like most Mega Drive games of the time, the game was not terribly challenging. It was a long game, just not a tough one. I managed to beat it on the second night of playing it, and it's not a game you can play with friends round, as it's a solo play on this one. The game might have been better served to have included a password option, as 60 minutes is a long playthrough from scratch each time. And I think this is why the game had no long lasting appeal. Once you beat it, there was no real reason to play it back through again. But the game had this endearing quality about it. And I remember at the time, when schoolmates would come round to see the Mega Drive, I thought they would want to see Golden Axe or Super Hang-On, an arcade game. But most of the time, they asked to see Ghostbusters. So I would fire it up, give them the controller, and let them have a go. And this approach was different from some of my other mates. Back then, my Amiga and Atari ST mates would show you a game first before letting you play it, which usually meant watching them play for about 20 minutes before getting a shot for yourself. Now that I was in that position, I would often just hand the controller over to a mate and let them have at it. Although, once word got around, put it this way, I had lots of school kids chapping at my door and acting like we'd been mates for years. Who are you again? What school do you go to? You know what I mean. Anyway, I got this game very early on in my ownership of the Mega Drive. I got my Mega Drive on the 27th of October 1990, and by Christmas that year, I had about 10 games, and Ghostbusters was one of those games. And I have to say, it was a game I enjoyed playing for a short spell, and while I didn't go back to it all that often, it did take a lot for me to part with it. And it was nothing to do with the game. It was just that I had coveted a Mega Drive for so long before I got my hands on one, that those first few titles held some real nostalgic meaning for me. Even back then, it took me a while before I could part with Last Battle and Mystic Defender, and both of those games were rubbish. But in the end, Ghostbusters did go, along with all the others, even Golden Axe and Revenge of Shinobi, which meant the world to me. But when I discovered emulation in the late 1990s, and after I played Golden Axe and Revenge of Shinobi, Ghostbusters was the next game I played on Mega Drive emulation. And it's weird, but it's the memories of that time period in my life that seem to be connected with that game. And when I play it, it just takes me back to December 1990, a few weeks before Christmas, at a time in my life when I hadn't a care or a worry in the world. And those are the days I cherish the most for the good times. And that was my look back at Ghostbusters on the Mega Drive. If you like this video, then please do feel free to give me a sub and a thumbs up, or maybe even a comment or two below about your memories of Ghostbusters on the Mega Drive. And a massive thank you to all of those who have subscribed and commented on my channel. Your feedback and support really does go a long way in helping the channel grow, and I do appreciate all of you, so thank you from me. And that's all from me, folks. Thanks for watching.